Go ahead.
Hello, and welcome to one of today's Tiger Alumni Week webinars, Connect, Collaborate, Succeed, Alumni Career Services and Opportunities. I am Sharon Lonther, AVP for Advancement Operations at RIT, and your moderator this afternoon. Before I introduce our speaker, there are a few housekeeping points I want to go over. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions can be entered in the Q&A box at any time throughout the discussion. We will make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and made available in upcoming weeks. A communication with how to access the recordings will be sent out and also posted on our website. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. We would like to thank our premier sponsor, Sharp Notions, as well as our Tiger sponsor, Rochester Regional Health, for helping make this week's programming possible. We also would like to thank our Access Services teams for helping us make this webinar accessible for all of our alumni. Real-time captioning is available within the webinar, and our interpreters will be spotlighted during the presentation. I want to let you know how grateful we are to all members of the RIT family who made a gift yesterday on Roar Day. These gifts have a direct and immediate impact on our students. If you haven't made your gift yet, there's still time. By visiting roar.edu, by visiting rit.edu/roar, your gift will be counted towards the Roar Day total. Now on to our session. We are pleased to welcome Kris Stehler, who will share information on our Office of Career Services and Co-op Education. Kris has been with the Office of Career Services and Cooperative Education for 23 years and is currently working with the College of Science, College of Health Sciences, and School of Individualized Studies students and their alumni. In addition, she manages career services and programming for RIT alumni. Kris holds an MS in counseling from the University of Rochester, where she focused on career counseling. She is passionate about using her skills as well as the technology resources of the office to help guide students and alumni toward the fulfillment of their professional development and career goals. Kris, thank you for joining us. The audience is all yours.
Thanks, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're continuing to stay safe and healthy in these times. Welcome to today's webinar, which will provide information on our office and the career services that we provide to RIT students and alumni, including a brief walkthrough of our new career and job management system, RIT Career Connect. I'll also talk about opportunities for alumni to collaborate with our office to help students achieve career success. Please feel free to ask questions at any time during the webinar. Next slide, Ron. I'm Kris Stehler again, and I manage the Alumni Career Services and Programming within our office. The overall goal of our office is to provide comprehensive, personalized services to all of our constituents, who include students, alumni, and our employer partners. These services help our students find career and job search success and connect them with companies through a variety of recruiting options. I would like to note that all RIT alumni have free access to all of our career programs and services for life. And I think there are some parents on the webinar as well. So though I'll be talking mostly about alumni career services, do feel free to ask questions about student career services as well. Our office has 30 dedicated career services professionals who are available to assist. One of the primary ways that we serve alumni is by offering individual advising for any job search related concern or question. There's an advisor in our office for every major or career field, and they're a good resource for things like resume and portfolio reviews, interviewing practice, including an in-depth mock interview if you'd like. They can help you work out a specific strategy for your search and provide resources that will be helpful for your specific industry or field. They can go through our Career Connect job system with you to make sure you're using it most effectively for your search. And since networking is such an important part of any job search, the advisors can help you develop an effective networking plan and show you how to make valuable connections with RIT alumni and also employers. Advising can be done in person, or if you're not in the area, by phone, email, or virtually. And of course, during this time frame, all appointments are through Zoom or phone. If you don't know who your career advisor is, just email me and I'll connect you to get the process started. My email is listed here. If you're interested in changing your career or you're not sure what direction you'd like to go in, schedule a session with our career counselor. Through a combination of assessment, testing, and discussion, he can help you determine potential options for making a shift to a new career that matches your values, strengths, and interests. He also has resources and information on graduate schools and the application process if you're interested in going in that direction. For longer term or more in-depth work, our personalized coaching service can connect you with a professional career coach. Our career coach partners have been screened by our office, and they often share their advice through workshops and panels. All their contact information is listed on the website, so you can check them out and reach out directly. Now, this is a fee-based service, but discounts are offered to RIT alumni. So no matter where you are in your career, our coaches can help you take that next step in developing and managing your career moving forward. Next slide. We have many other resources available to our alumni through our alumni career page, and I'd like to go through some of them now with you. A great resource is our Experts webinar series. This series provides on-demand webinars featuring the nation's top career authors and experts that share their tips, tools, and best practices to help you manage your career and your job search. There are 4 categories geared towards every stage of career development, as you see here. So if you need to brush up on your job search skills, the Career Search series can introduce you to the latest job search strategies and advice on everything from networking, resumes, cover letters, interviewing, job boards, personal branding, and social media job search strategies. If you need career advice, the Career Discussions series features top career authors who will discuss best practices and advice on negotiating salaries, changing careers, dealing with difficult people, and much more. If you need to improve your soft skills, the Career Skills webinar series will share with you top soft skills experts on teamwork, leadership, creativity, communication, public speaking, problem solving, and ethics. And then if you're starting to think about retirement, the Career Encore series will introduce you to top retirement authors and experts on the emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical, entrepreneurial, and even financial things that are important to consider when you're entering your retirement years. And then Career Camp is for students who are graduating to get them started on the right path to finding their first professional job. So all you have to do is follow the link from our website and create an account, and then you can access the archived webinars. And they have live webinars every Wednesday as well. Next slide. Our website also contains job search resources for different areas of study or fields. These include job search sites specifically for these fields, as well as recommendations for professional associations. On this page, we've highlighted only a few suggestions for each general field due to a shortage of space, but your career advisor has additional resources for a detailed search within your targeted field. We also have some encore resources listed on this page. Again, so if you're thinking about moving to the next phase of your life, you're interested in starting a new or an encore career, maybe in a different field or an alternate type of work arrangement, we've got some resources that can get you started in that way. Next slide. The website also has general job search information and tips on the different parts of a job search. So this includes resumes and portfolios, interviewing, networking, and salary and offer negotiation. And we've added specific tips and guidelines for alumni and experienced alumni resume samples as well. So this information can be a starting point for your job search, and then you can discuss your own job search strategies and resources in more depth with your career advisor. And here also is where you'll gain access to our Career Connect system. Next slide. Alumni are welcome to attend any of our career fairs. So we have 2 general fairs each year in the fall and the spring, and they have about 250 companies attending each fair. These fairs are for all majors and career fields, and typically about 200 alumni attend each fair. Our whole attendance is about 5,000 students and alumni. And then we have a number of specialty career fairs as well throughout the year, and you'll see those listed here. These are targeted to specific majors or fields. And companies also offer information sessions and networking events throughout the year to promote their companies and their opportunities directly to students in an informal environment. This fall, of course, we had to cancel all on-campus career fairs and events. So in lieu of these, we offered 2 virtual career weeks during which employers presented information sessions targeting students and alumni in 5 different tracks: engineering, computing, science, research, math, business, and creative. And actually, these were quite successful. We had over 150 companies, and they presented to over 4,000 students and alumni. For the spring, we're not entirely sure yet what's going to happen, but it's good to know that we can still successfully connect employers, students, and alumni in the virtual world. Next slide. And then speaking of these challenging times, I have put together a coronavirus FAQ page for alumni with information and resources to support you if you're currently conducting a job search. This includes tips and resources on the topics that you see listed here, and also our Job Search Survival Kit, which is a series of recorded webinars on job search topics, especially for these challenging times. Next slide. Alumni also have access to our Career Connect online job and career management system. So I'd like to give just a brief overview of that now. And then before we talk about Career Connect, I do want to briefly mention our previous job listing system, Handshake. So some of you might have been on Handshake and might have wondered where that had gone. So all your information this summer should have moved to Career Connect, and you should have gotten an email if you had an active account. And you still do have the ability to use Handshake as an additional job search resource, though. You'll have to set up a new account using your rit.edu email at www.joinhandshake.com. And then once you set up your new account, you can search for jobs that are listed for all students and alumni. These will not be RIT-specific jobs, though. So again, while this is primarily a tool for college students, as before, there will be job listings at the alumni level. So again, when you're doing a job search, use all your resources, so feel free to sign up for this as well. And then now on to our new system. RIT Career Connect allows you to easily find jobs specifically posted for RIT students and alumni. Again, we're a college. Many of the jobs in Career Connect are posted for students and new graduates, but our employer partners know that they want to hire alumni. They come here to post their jobs. And so this system should definitely be part of your job search resources. You also have access to the over 27,000 employers who utilize Career Connect through the employer database, which you can sort by industry and geographic location. Alumni have to use their RIT account to access Career Connect. So if you don't have an updated account, just go to start.rit.edu, click on the Alumni Access link, and follow the instructions. Once you create your new account, then you'll be able to log into your Career Connect account using your username and your new rit.edu email address. Next slide. Once you log in, you'll see the home page. You'll be able to access the parts of the system from the left navigation bar, as you see, and there will be a list of shortcuts over on the right-hand side. Your first step should be to go to your account, where you'll set up and manage your personal, academic, notification, and privacy settings. Next slide. Next, complete your profile. So you want to make your profile as complete as possible using keywords for your targeted field. As alumni, this is even more important than your major. The more complete your profile and career interests are, and the more you search for jobs, the more customized your results become, with Career Connect suggesting potential opportunities and making specific recommendations. So consider these different elements. Your top information pulls from the rest of your profile, so you should see highlights listed based on what you put in the rest of your profile, as you see in the example here. Choose a professional picture and an interesting background. You make a personal statement. It gives you the opportunity to put a summary statement in there. And this is a great way to differentiate yourself from other candidates and talk about what makes you unique. So be creative and personal so employers can see you as a person, not just the data you provide. And this can be similar to your summary of qualifications or personal statement on your resume, but be sure to add more personal elements as well. So think of this as being similar to your LinkedIn summary statement. Your education section should be complete. Your RIT major is actually set with information from the registrar's office, so you can't change that, but you can add any other college information. In your experience section, add your experiences, especially, of course, your relevant ones, with detailed descriptions and highlights of your accomplishments. Your skills section, be sure to add your relevant technical skills, but also professional or soft skills. All of these, of course, are used by the system to suggest jobs and also by employers searching for specific skills. So make sure that you include all of your skills. In the project section, you can elaborate on school projects, or if you've been in the work world for a while, you could discuss independent projects that you've done to demonstrate updated skills, or even volunteer projects that you've done. You can really make your profile your own with information that best highlights your specific skills and qualifications. Add your LinkedIn URL and any other social media information if you'd like to. And then publish your profile when it's complete so companies can view and reach out to you, and so the system can target jobs for you. Companies can view your profile if you apply to a job through the system or if you RSVP to an information session. Next slide. So here's what a completed profile will look like. And then next slide. And then here's the rest of that. So you'll see here similarities between this profile and your LinkedIn profile. A lot of things are the same. Next slide. In the Documents section, Career Connect allows you to upload multiple documents to have available to apply to posted positions. You can upload resumes, and of course for alumni, we recommend a unique targeted resume for each job, as well as cover letters, transcripts, letters of recommendation, and any other documents you want to be able to send to companies that support your candidacy for their jobs. There's also a section for opt-in resume books. Here's where you can opt into specific resume books. And for alumni, you'll see the options that are listed on the slide here. If you opt into a resume book, then we'll send your resume to employers who are seeking alumni in those key areas if they request it. And then there's also a portfolio section that you can add your portfolio. Next slide. Using the Jobs tab, you can set up criteria to filter your search and create customizable search lists. So you'll see a variety of search options, including industry, job function, major, company name, and a keyword search box. I'd recommend using different combinations of search options to get the best results. So you may get a good search result by searching for a very specific major, like accounting, but you may get even better results searching for a specific skill, like C++ programming. So once you've set up a search, you can save your filters to make rerunning a job easier, and you can also set jobs as favorites. And then clicking on a specific job will give you all the information on that job, including how to apply. In some cases, the company contact information will also be shown so that you can follow up directly on your application. There are a couple of other database search options in the jobs section as well. The extended job search tab takes you to an external database of jobs posted to the system as a whole, not just for RIT students and alumni. We're part of a larger system. This allows you to search by keyword and geographic location. And then the MBA job web is another external resource for MBA related jobs. Next slide. In the employer database, you'll find, again, our more than 27,000 companies that are part of Career Connect. You can find any of these employers using the Employer tab, even those who do not currently recruit at RIT. You can search by industry, location, employer size, and keyword. And then as a result, you'll get specific information on those companies, including their profile, links to their social media, any current jobs they may have posted. And sometimes you also get public contacts within the company that make it easier to reach out and to follow up. So in this database, you can use the information for research and to find additional companies to target for your job search. Next slide. The events section has information on upcoming career fairs, which again, it's all open to alumni. You'll also find upcoming company information sessions, as well as workshops provided by our office on job search topics. All events are open to alumni and you can RSVP through the system just by clicking the RSVP button. Next slide. Finally, the resources section provides presentations on job search topics, as well as information for career exploration and access to Vault guides. And you may have heard of Vault. These provide valuable in-depth information on different industries and fields, and you get free access to Vault by being an RIT alum through the system. You can even participate in a virtual recorded mock interview, which you can then send to your career advisor for feedback. So that's Career Connect in a nutshell. I really encourage you to log in, create a profile, become familiar with the system, especially if you're in a job search. If you'd like a more comprehensive guide to Career Connect, I'm happy to send you a recorded webinar I put together recently. You can just email and let me know. That's a summary of how we can help you. We can stop briefly to see if there are any questions, Sharon.
We don't have any questions, but we certainly do have some time for questions. So if individuals wanted to submit their questions in the chat box.
Right, if we don't have questions, we can continue for now. And of course, answer questions as we go along. Ron, if you want to go to the next slide. So now let's talk about how you can help our office and RIT students. First, become one of our employer partners and recruit our talented students, graduates, and alumni. We can help with any recruiting need that you may have, beginning with bringing students on board for a co-op or internship experience. Most of our programs, as you know, have a co-op requirement, and all students are encouraged to participate in experiential education, whether it's required or not. So whether this is a specific co-op program or position, a full or part-time internship, or even a research position, students will be eager to gain real-world experience at your organization. You can also recruit students who are graduating for entry-level positions and also our alumni at the experience level. Post any jobs by creating an account through the employer side of Career Connect and set up on-campus recruiting to interview selected students if you'd like also. We have many ways for companies to connect with students on campus and virtually, including information sessions to provide company information and to network informally with students. Sometimes also companies come on campus and set up information tables in our common college areas to speak informally with students. We can set up meetings with department chairs and faculty so that employers can find out more about our programs. And we can set up meetings with student groups and clubs also. Every company who joins our system has an account manager in our office and one of those career service coordinators who can assist with all recruiting activities, from posting jobs to setting up information sessions and meetings with your targeted students and departments also. Again, so feel free to email me if you'd like to start a recruiting relationship with us. Next slide. Here's a more in-depth picture of our employer partnerships. There are, again, currently more than 27,000 companies in our Career Connect employer database who recruit students and alumni at all levels. More than 40,000 jobs were posted last year, all vetted, approved, and targeted to the applicable majors by our very busy support staff. 325 companies came to campus and interviewed 5,390 students for co-op and full-time positions. 188 companies also conducted information sessions or other networking events for students. Many of these involved connecting with student clubs and organizations, and of course also involved food, which is a sure way to get a captive audience. And meeting students face-to-face or even virtually helps personalize your company and shows your genuine interest in the students. Next slide. I also wanted to mention our very impressive co-op numbers for last year. 4,595 students completed 6,200 co-op assignments at 2,339 companies. This includes large, mid-sized, small companies, startup companies, companies all across the country, and even internationally. Another neat program we did last year, we collaborated with our Spectrum Support Office on a neurodiverse hiring initiative. So through external funding, 9 cooperative education opportunities were created for neurodiverse students through our employer partnerships. So we always have room for more co-op and internship employers. So if your company doesn't already work with us, consider joining our elite group of employer partners. Next slide. The highlights of RIT's recruiting efforts are definitely our career fairs. So again, from the employer perspective, we hold 2 general and several smaller boutique fairs throughout the year. Our fall and spring general fairs are open to all majors and host over 250 companies each. Out of the 850 plus employer representatives at each fair, over 250 are alumni. So our alumni recruiters love to come back and talk with students. With more than 5,000 student and alumni attendees, these events are high energy and exciting, and a powerful opportunity for employers to connect with students and alumni. It's actually very moving to see all our students dressed in their suits and nervously practicing their 60-second commercials. Employers have the opportunity to stay the next day to conduct interviews with selected students, and more than half take advantage of that. Then throughout the year, we hold smaller boutique career fairs for specific audiences. This lets companies connect in a more personalized way with students in a smaller venue. Companies really enjoy these events, and students appreciate events targeted to their specific majors and career fields. For example, last year's Creative Industry Day had over 850 student attendees and 168 representatives from 66 companies. So this fall, all our events and fairs went virtual due to the pandemic. What we did was offer 2 virtual career weeks during which companies presented information sessions to our students. We had a total of 157 sessions with 4,248 attendees. This number is really close to our usual career fair attendance, so we were thrilled so many companies and students participated. Next slide. There are many other ways for you to share your time and talent with our office as well. We have a very active and diverse employer advisory board and invite you to join and provide feedback that will help shape our programs and services. We also rely on our employer and alumni partners to share their expertise and advice to students through a wide variety of programs, workshops, and panels. We hold 2 employer mock interview days every year before our career fairs, and students really appreciate getting feedback from an industry perspective. We always have a waiting list of students for those events. If you're able to host a student for a shadowing experience or participate in our upcoming mentoring program, those are great opportunities to connect with and offer guidance to students. We also collaborate with other departments on campus that you have a chance to participate in. For example, we're currently working with the Center for Leadership and Civic Engagement on a leadership series in which alumni and employers share their experiences and advice in the areas of leadership. And this is going to help students develop their own leadership skills. And I'd like to send it back to you guys. Do you have any other ideas? Maybe you'd like to write about your career for our social media sites, or even create a short video to share interviewing tips with students. You can do virtual resume or portfolio reviews for students. We're really open to any suggestions for working together. Whether you share your knowledge of your industry or field, or advice on the job search process, your experiences are very valued by students. Next slide. I'd also like to invite you to join our LinkedIn group, which is called RIT Career Services. This group is open to students, alumni, and employer partners, and employers are welcome to post information about their company and job opportunities for the group. This is an especially good avenue to connect with other alumni for experience level positions. Next slide. So that's some brief information on how we can help with your career needs and how you can partner with us. Alumni are very important to us. We want to help you succeed and encourage you to be part of our success. Our expertise and your continued support ensure success for RIT students and fellow alumni. So join us. Together, we're better. My email address is here, and I'd like to encourage you to reach out to me at any time to further discuss anything we've talked about today, or to volunteer or ask any questions. And then be sure to visit our website for more information as well. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And again, if there are any parents and you have questions about our services for students, I can take those too.
If anyone has any questions, you can enter them directly into the Q&A box at the bottom of your webinar screen. So Kris, we have a question. Somebody lives in the Albany region and wants to know what possible remote activities would be suitable to get involved in.
So if you're an alum and you'd like to assist our office, I can suggest maybe remote mock interviews. I imagine in the spring, our programming will still be virtual. So if you'd like to do a virtual mock interview in our mock interview day, that would be great. Or certainly if you would like to do virtual resume reviews, it's great to have our students have their resumes looked at by an industry professional. So we could send students your way, or use you as a willing participant to review resumes. We're going to do virtual probably workshops as well. So if you have a specific area you'd like to talk about, maybe job searching for your specific career field, or interview tips for somebody who'd like to enter your field, we could use you as a workshop presenter or panelist. For a lot of our specific programs, for example, our computing cluster, our computing college, we also often have panels who talk about their careers and offer advice to students for getting started in the computing field. And we do those for other majors as well. So any of those would be something that you could certainly participate in virtually.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of Tiger Alumni Week. Bye for now.